It's a shame that it's actually come to this. I need you, the viewer, to take a good look at this picture. This is the true nature of the child support system in the US. And me standing on this corner is the result of a naive belief that the family court had to actually follow the law. So I can't blame anybody but myself. I've been in this system for over a decade, so I should have known better. What you're reading on that street sign is true. I may have lost my job due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's because of the family court / child support system that I'm going to lose my home and maybe even my freedom within the next 60 days. See, prior to the pandemic, I had a very high paying job and an equally high child support obligation every month. But when I lost my job due to the pandemic and went on unemployment, the family court refused to reduce my child support to reflect that of my decreased income. This led to an inability to pay my necessary living expenses or my child support obligation every month. This is not just, my story is not original. This happened to thousands of men, and a lot of them, including myself, are still trying to recover financially. In case you're wondering, the purpose of this video is not a fundraiser, nor is it a publicity stunt. It's to raise awareness about my situation and the situation of so many others so that all of us can get some assistance or maybe even intervention from a higher court. I ask that you watch this entire video, and while watching it, try to put yourself in our shoes by continuously asking yourself the question, if this were happening to you, what would you do?
What would you do? What would you really do?
So, what would you really do if you had lost your job in a global pandemic? And as the non-custodial parent in a court-monitored and regulated co-parenting situation, you did what you were supposed to do and requested a reduction in your child support. A reduction to an amount that would coincide with your significantly decreased income and thus follow the state guidelines for child support. Your attorney then assures you that this should be a simple, straightforward process because it has become public knowledge that 40 million other Americans were laid off just like you.
And unemployment claims continue to climb. Look at it for the last week compared to 3 weeks prior. It's an 1,800% increase.
As if we needed another reminder of the devastating economic impact of COVID-19 on American families. Today, we got that weekly update on jobless claims. Some 4.4 million people applied for unemployment benefits last week. That brings the tally for the last 5 weeks to more than 26 million Americans.
30 million Americans unemployed and desperate for help.
Another 2.1 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, pushing the total past 40 million since the coronavirus pandemic began in mid-March. Francis Stacy is with us now to break down.
So, what would you do if the mother of your children ignores all of those facts? She then goes on to instruct her team of attorneys to inform the judge that your unemployment has nothing to do with the global pandemic, but instead, you are only unemployed because you just don't want to pay child support.
With so many people out of work and facing other financial issues because of the pandemic, some simply can't afford to pay their child support. So what should you do? What can you do? We have the crucial information you need to have.
Here in Texas, child support must be paid, no matter what.
Are you serious?
What would you do?
What would you do?
What would you do? What in the hell would you do?
So again, I want you to think about what you would do if because of that no matter what mentality, you were going to be legally obligated to do the impossible, and that's make a child support payment every month that's more than 100% of your income. For those viewers who don't know how the child support system works in the state of Texas, I need to give you a couple quick facts. Fact number one, child support is set based on a percentage of a parent's income, and that percentage is based on the number of children they have. Fact number two, child support does not automatically adjust when a parent's income changes. Even though child support in Texas is based off a percentage of the parent's income, the legal obligation is set at the hearing, and the amount is based off of the percentage of that parent's income at the time of the hearing. If your income changes after that hearing, your child support obligation does not change with it. The only way to get it changed is to go before a judge and have them adjust it based on your change in income. Fact number 3, the full court order amount of child support is automatically taken out of any income check that passes through the state. That's unemployment and or W-2. Now here's the killer. In a case where the child support amount exceeds the amount of income, for example, someone who has lost their job in a global pandemic and is now on unemployment, the government can't take out the full child support obligation because that would leave that parent with a negative amount of money to live off of. In contrast, what they are legally allowed to do is take up to 50% of that person's income. Then after Uncle Sam or the IRS comes in and takes their 10% for federal taxes, that parent is left with a fraction of what their income used to be. So in my case, after federal taxes and child support was taken out, I was left with only $836 a month to live on. That's it, $836 a month. That's all the family court and the attorney general left me in the middle of a global pandemic, knowing that I had 2 children to care for every first, third, and fifth weekend.
And as COVID cases rise across the country, the economic fallout also grows.
A startling new poll reveals just how much Americans are struggling. 41% report some loss of income. More than a quarter of Americans say someone in their household has been laid off. 1 in 5 are struggling to pay their bills.
Bumper-to-bumper traffic for miles waiting to get into food banks.
Keep it going.
As millions of suddenly unemployed Americans now struggle to get food on the table.
We have to do this to survive. I'm just a single parent. There's nobody but me.
Thousands of relief.
So again, think about what would you do if your new reality was to scramble for handouts in order to survive? And you're forced to live that way until a judge does what they're supposed to do and follows the law and reduces your child support to the legal limit. But in the state of Texas, that can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, or like in my case, never at all.
What would you do?
What would you do?
What in the hell would you do?
So, what would you do if you were forced to wait an entire year before you were able to get before a judge and have a final hearing regarding a reduction in your child support? Only for that judge to deny your temporary reduction, not permanent, your requested temporary reduction in your child support. And this denial would ultimately lead to you having an inability to pay your essential bills and continue living below the federal poverty line. This, of course, leads to the most essential bill not being paid, and that is the mortgage. And because of that, you get almost $40,000 behind on your mortgage payments. And what made it even harder to bear is the fact that the family court acted like they didn't know the hardship they were putting me under, that they didn't know what was going on in the country at the time.
More than 4 months into the coronavirus pandemic, the United States is facing another ongoing crisis: evictions. As government relief and legal protections are running out for millions of out-of-work Americans, protesters are demanding lawmakers to cancel rent and mortgage payments to grant reprieve during the pandemic.
Cancel mortgage, cancel rent. We need housing, can't live in tents.
The Trump administration is suspending all FHA evictions and foreclosures for 60 days.
So we're working very closely with Dr. Ben Carson and everybody from HUD.
Americans have been struggling to pay for housing costs.
In July 2020, an estimated 32% of Americans missed a rent or mortgage payment. That was up from 24% in April, 31% in May, and 30% in June.
Democrats say they want Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to work with them to make sure stopping all foreclosures is a part of the next coronavirus funding package.
If they go several weeks without paying, they will be evicted. They will be foreclosed on. We need Senator McConnell to actually...
It's been 3 years since I lost my job due to the pandemic. And it's unfortunate that I'm still in the same financial situation as I was back then. Despite no longer being on unemployment and back to working full time, I'm not making the six-figure salary that I was prior to the pandemic. And because my child support was never reduced, the Attorney General is still taking half of everything I earned. This is making it impossible for me to pay my mortgage. And if it weren't for government assistance and nonprofit organizations such as the Burden Bearers Project, I wouldn't have made it this far. But all that assistance has run out, my mortgage is due, and there's nothing I can do about it because of the child support system in the state of Texas. I will lose my home in approximately the next 60 days. The reason I'm giving an estimate of about 60 days is because I've been in this position several times before. I've been under foreclosure for well over 1.5 years now, and every 3 to 6 months, I'm praying for another miracle to stop the seizure and auction sale of my home. At this point in time, I have missed the payments for March of this year and soon to miss the payment for April of this year as well, which based on the last foreclosure date that I had of November 2022, I give about another 30 days before I get a letter notifying me that I have 30 days before my home will be auctioned and sold in foreclosure. If the high probability of you losing your home and being out on the street wasn't stressful enough, what if I told you that because it was mathematically impossible for you to pay the full amount of your child support every month, the remaining balance was just collecting in what's called arrears that was stacking up over time and having interest added to it and collecting to an amount that you would never be able to pay off in your lifetime. To further clarify, between the time period of April 2020 when I was laid off and Christmas of 2022, I have collected almost $50,000 worth of back child support, aka arrears. It's because of numbers like that that the mother of my children is allowed to have me thrown in jail for a time period ranging of 180 days to 18 months. It's because of numbers like that that the judge on my case also has the option to have me thrown in jail and held there until I pay back the full balance of the arrears. It's because of numbers like that that I am labeled a deadbeat, and the attorney representing the mother of my children can disrespect me in open court and ridicule me for doing everything I can to make ends meet. But the thing is that in all those scenarios, they refuse to acknowledge the fact that numbers like that would not exist if the elected official on my case actually followed the state laws and guidelines regarding child support. This is the family court system in the state of Texas.
So again, I ask you, what would you do?
What would you do? What would you do?
So I would really like you to think about what you would do if the judge assigned to your case refused to follow the state guidelines and set your child support at 25% of your income. And thus, she guarantees that your future is one of either incarceration or homelessness. I've tried almost a dozen different resources for help and come up with nothing. The only thing I haven't tried yet is reaching out to national investigative reporters or news media, or telling my story through social media. So that's why I'm here asking for your help. And by help, I don't mean I'm asking you to subscribe to my YouTube channel or even boost the number of likes for this video. I'm definitely not asking you to donate any money to me. I don't want any of that stuff. What I really want, what I really need, is for you to actually listen to my story and take it seriously. Watch these videos, and most important, share them with at least 2 other people. And the hope is that by sharing my story with at least 2 other people, that enough awareness will get out there, that my case will get enough exposure, that the judge on the case will either see what she did is wrong and acknowledge that this in no way is in the best interest of the children, or that someone above her will see that what's being done to me is not only unjust, but it's unconstitutional. And then they'll step in and do what she should have done in the first place and follow the law and set my child support at 25% of my net income. So in conclusion, instead of asking you what you would do if you were in my situation, this time I ask you, now that you know my situation, what are you going to do? Please share this video.
I hope this helps.
Hey, I appreciate it, man, but I don't want your money, I just want your time. If you can scan this QR code, and it will take you to a video explaining my situation and how I got here. Appreciate it. Just watch the video, share it with 2 people, man. That's all I ask.
No problem, I got you, man.
All right.
God bless you.
Appreciate it.